To our dear professor in this course, ABM 167, Section YY, Professor Rosan V. Bantuas, my fellow classmates, please receive my sincere greetings of peace and love. Hope everybody is well and safe. Anyway, I am Ronaldo Antipolo, and I will be your first reporter coming from Group 4, which consists of 5 reporters, namely Aidel Harantilla, Art Bansara, Husin Dirogungan, and Salsabil Munawar, and yours truly. Our topic talks about the strategy of international business. So I shall begin. Strategy and the firm. As our topic talks about the strategy of international business, let me define first the word strategy. Business strategy can be understood as the course of action or set of the decisions that a business uses to attract customers, compete successfully, strengthening performance, and achieve organizational goals. Strategy outlines how business should be carried out to reach the desired ends. As strategy being a course of actions, I have here a question. What actions can managers take to compete more effectively in a global economy? And here's the answer. Managers must consider, first, the benefits of expanding into foreign market. Next, managers must consider which strategies to pursue in foreign markets. Also, the value of collaboration with global competitors. Lastly, the advantage of strategic alliances. Strategic alliances, by the way, is an arrangement between two companies that have decided to share resources to undertake a specific, mutually beneficial project. Strategy and the firm. I have here profitability and profit growth. Let's differentiate the two. Profitability refers to the rate of return the firm makes on its invested capital. Profitability is the relative measure of profit o kita ng isang business firm, while profit growth is the percentage increase in net profits over time. Profitability and growth go hand in hand pagdating sa success ng isang business. Value creation. I have here a question. How do you increase the profitability of a firm? So the answer would be, to increase profitability, value must be created for the consumer. Value creation happens when a business or organization uses its work and resources to create something of value that is sold or binibenta to a customer base. Value creation is measured by the difference between V, which is the price that the firm can change for that product given competitive pressure, and C, which is the cost of producing that product. The two basic strategies for creating values are differentiation, which is the principle of setting your company apart from the competition through a specific element, and low cost. The true winner is the company with an actual lowest cost in the marketplace. Determinants of enterprise value. Enterprise value, or the measure of a company's total value. Enterprise value helps the investors to know the accurate value of the company and determine whether it's undervalued or not. Under enterprise valuation are profitability and profit growth, which I have already discussed and defined from the last slide. And under profitability are reduced cost, and add value and raise prices. By reducing cost, it will attract more buyers or customers and will lead to profit. It is same with adding value of a certain product and raising its price. Under profit growth are sell more in existing markets and enter new market. So, by selling more in existing markets and entering into a new market will lead to an increase in profit growth. Strategic positioning. Strategic positioning reflects choices a company makes about the kind of value it will create and how that value will be created differently than rivals. So, to maximize profitability, a firm must first pick a position on the efficiency frontier that is viable in the sense that there is enough demand to support that device. Next, configure its internal operations so that they support that position. And then, make sure that the firm has the right organization structure in place to execute its strategy. So a firm's strategy, operations, and organization must be all consistent with each other in order to achieve a competitive advantage and superior profitability. The firm as a value chain. Firms are essentially value chains composed of a series of distinct value creation activities, including production, marketing, materials management, R&D or research and development, human resources, information systems, and the firm infrastructure. Value creation activities can be categorized as primary activities and support activities. The firm as a value chain. First, we have primary activities. Primary activities involves creating the product, marketing and delivering the product to buyers, and providing support and after-sale service to the buyers of the product. Creating the product or ang paggawa ng produkto, and then marketing and delivering the product to buyers o yung pagbenta ng produkto, and providing support and after-sale service. Best example ito is yung warranty and repair services. Then we have support activities. Support activities provides the inputs that allow the primary activities of production and marketing to occur. Example of support activities are firm infrastructure, human resource management, technology development, and procurement. The implementation of strategy. We have here organization architecture and organizational structure. Organization architecture is the totality of a firm's organization, formal organizational structure, control systems and incentives, organizational culture, processes, and people. While the organizational structure is the formal division of the organization into sub-unit. It is the location of decision-making responsibilities within that structure. Organizational structure is the establishment of integration mechanisms to coordinate the activities of subunits, including cross-functional terms and or pan-regional committees.
Ang report sa grupo namin at mag-start po ako sa implementation of strategy. So, the implementation of strategy, meron siyang organization architecture and organizational structure. Remember though that a firm can have the best strategy in the world, but if it cannot implement it, the strategy is useless. So we have to consider the firm's organization. when we talk about strategy. We use the term organization architecture to refer to the totality of a firm's organization, including formal organizational structure, control systems and incentives, organizational culture, processes, and people. Let's look at each of these elements individually, starting with organizational structure. Organizational structure refers to the formal division of the organization into subunits like product divisions or functions. The location of decision-making responsibilities within the structure, for example, whether it's centralized or decentralized, and the establishment of integrating mechanisms to coordinate the activities of the subunits, including cross-functional teams and or pan-regional committees. As illustrated by the arrows in figure, the various components of organization architecture are not independent of each other. So, hindi sila naging independent sa matag isa. Each component shape the others. An obvious example is the strategy regarding people. This can be used proactively to hire individuals whose internal values are consistent with those the firm wishes to emphasize in its organizational culture. So, dapat internal values are consistent. The people component of architecture can be used to reinforce the prevailing culture of the organization. So, as you can see here in this illustration, a firm organizational architecture is comprised of the firm's structure, incentives and control system, culture, people, and so controls. Controls are the metrics used to measure the performance of subunits and make judgments about how well managers are running those subunits. So, incentives. Incentives are the devices that reward appropriate managerial behavior. They are often linked to performance incentives. Number 3 is processes, are the manner in which decisions are made and work is performed within the organization. They include things like the process of deciding how to allocate resources or evaluate managerial performance. For organizational culture is the norms and value systems that are shared among the employees of an organization. We'll talk more about the role of organizational culture and strategy later. People include not only employees but also the strategy used to recruit, compensate, and retain those individuals and the type of people that they are in terms of their skills, values, and orientation. In some strategic fit, recall from the topic, so to be successful in our product, we need to find a strategy that made sense given the conditions in the market. Kung babasahin natin dito yung strategic fit, so we can say that there must be a fit between market conditions, strategy, operations, and organization if a firm is to achieve superior performance. So, the operations of the firm must support the firm's strategy. No? And even the organizational architecture of the firm must match the firm operations and strategy. As this illustration, here the concept of strategic fit is shown visually. Notice how the firm strategy fits the conditions in the market and is supported by the firm's organization, architecture, and operation strategy. So, global expansion and profits. Why do firms go global? What does global expansion offer to firms? Well, there are many benefits of expanding internationally. Firms that operate internationally expand the market for their products. It's realize locations economies by locating value creation activities where they can be performed most efficiently, realize greater cost economies from experience effects, and earn a greater return by leveraging skills developed in foreign markets by transferring them to other parts of the organization. Let's look at these benefits more closely. So dito mo mabasa yung paano yung firms that operate internationally. So leveraging products and competencies. Most of products that sell in global markets begin their international expansion by taking products that were developed for the home market and selling them in foreign markets. Like Procter and Gamble, for example, developed Pampers for the US market, but then found a market for them in other parts of the world. How well a company can do this depends not only on what it's selling, but also on its core competences or skills within the firm that competitors cannot easily match or duplicate. These core competences are these leveraging products and competencies are the basis for competitive advantage because they enable the firm to reduce the cost of value creation or create a value in a way that justifies premium pricing. For example, McDonald's has a core competence in managing fast food operations that has allowed it to set up shop in more than 120 countries and rely on the foreign markets for more than half. So when we see leveraging products and competencies, so sila yung nag-increase ng growth. No? A firm can sell products or services developed at home in foreign markets. So success depends on the type of goods and services. So, yeah. No. In location economies come from performing value creation activities in the optimal location for that activity. Wherever in the world that might be, you already know from earlier chapters that countries differ in terms of economic, political, legal, and cultural factors. What firms have to do is identify where each value creation activity should be located to best take advantage of location economy. So if the best programmers are in Silicon Valley, then programmer activities should be located there. If the best assembly operation are in Mexico, then locate assembly in Mexico and so on. So that's the location economies. Is a firm should locate value creation activities. Firm that successfully do this and can lower the cost of value creation, can enable a firm to differentiate its product offering from those of competitors. So that's location economies come from performing value. Another, by locating value creation activities in their optimal locations, firm will either lower the cost of value creation, which can help them achieve a low cost position, or firms will be able to differentiate their product from others. When a firm is able to take advantage of location economies in different parts of the world, it creates a global web of value creation activities where different stages of the value chain are dispersed to those locations where perceived value is maximized or where the cost of value creation are minimized. Keep in mind that transportation costs and trade barriers can complicate this picture. Even in a particular location offers an optimal environment for a particular activity, transportation costs or trade barriers may make it less desirable. Similarly, it's important to consider political risk when making location decisions. An unstable government can make an otherwise attractive location less attractive. So, as you read this, another location economics. Under this strategy, different stages of the value chain are dispersed to those locations around the global where perceived value is maximized, as what I said. Now, experience effects. The first is the experience curve. So, what is the experience curve? It is the systematic reduction in production costs that have been observed to occur over the life of a product. A product's production cost decline by some quantity about each time cumulative output doubles. 2 is the learning effects. It is cost savings that come from learning by doing. So, in learning effects, mas maintindihan mo ang isang gamit ng experience effects if cost savings that come from learning by doing. Labor productivity increases when individuals learn the most efficient ways to perform particular tasks, and management learns how to manage the new operation more efficiently. So, learning effects. Cost savings that come from learning by doing. So, from learning by doing. So, pag na-learn mo at ginawa mo, doon mo makuha mo yung cost savings. At yun ang learning effects. The experience curve, the systematic reduction. So, yung reduction in the production cost, a product production cost nag-decline by some quantity about each time cumulative outputs and doubles. And last, the experience effects in economies of scale. Expanding internationally can also allow firms to gain economies scale or reduction in unit costs that are achieved by producing in large volumes. Companies that achieve economies of scale are able to spread fixed costs over large volumes or use specialized equipment or personnel. So, for example, in the auto industry, a factor is efficient when it produces about 200 cars a year, preferably of the same model. If domestic demand is not large enough to warrant this level of production, firms might still be able to achieve it by exporting cars to foreign markets. Moving down the experience curve is also strategically significant for companies. By doing this, companies can lower their cost of creating value. Firms that can move down the experience curve the fastest will have a competitive advantage. So a firm will be motivated to produce using a single plant to serve the global market as a means of getting down the curve rapidly. So, in economies of scale, it is the ability to spread fixed costs over a large volume. So, serving a global market from a single location is consistent with moving down the experience curve and steadily. So, yun ang economies of scale, expanding internationally.
I am Arhani Bibansara and I am here to continue our discussions about the international business strategy. Leveraging subsidiary skills. To help increase fair value, managers should first recognize that value skills can be developed anywhere within the firm's global network, not just at corporate center. Second is, managers should use incentive systems to encourage local employees to acquire new skills. Third is, develop a process to identify when new skills have been created. Lastly, Managers should act as facilitators to transfer valuable skills within the firm. Skills that are developed in the home market can be transferred to other markets like MTV did. When it transferred this format to other markets, keep in mind though that valuable skills can also be developed elsewhere in the firm and be transferred to the corporate office. McDonald's, for example, has found that its foreign stores often have ideas that can be incorporated elsewhere in the organization. Um, In France, for example, slower sales recently prompted a shift toward a more inviting atmosphere with an upgraded menu. The company is currently considering using this format at other locations where sales are sluggish. MR Honeybee Bansara. Firms that expand internationally can increase their profitability and profit growth by entering markets where competitors lack similar competencies, realizing location economies, exploiting experience curve effects, transferring valuable skills within the organizations. So, global expansion offers companies numerous ways to increase profitability and profit growth. Firms that expand in Firms that compete in the global marketplace typically face two types of competitive pressures. First is the pressures for cost reductions, second is pressures to be locally responsive. These pressures place conflicting demands on the firm. You may be thinking by now that by expanding into foreign markets, firms can quickly realize location economies and experience effects. However, firms that compete internationally face two types of competitive pressures: pressures for cost reductions and pressures to be locally responsive. Unfortunately, these pressures usually place conflicting demands on the company. Firms that In this picture, as you can see, some firms face high pressure for cost reductions while others face high pressures for local responsiveness. Some really unlucky companies face pressures for cost reductions and local responsiveness simultaneously. Dealing with these pressures can be a strategic nightmare for companies. In this picture, as you can see, some pressures for cost reductions are greatest in industry producing commodity type products that fill universal needs that exist when the tastes and preferences of consumers in different nations are similar in, if not identical. When major competitors are based in low cost locations where there's persistent excess capacity, where consumers are powerful and face low switching costs. To respond to these pressures, firms need to lower the costs of value creation. When a firm faces pressures for cost reductions, it has to try to lower the cost of value creation. This type of pressure is usually greatest in industries that produce commodity type products that fill universal needs like steel. When major competitors are based on low cost locations where excess capacity is persistent and where consumers are powerful and face low switching costs. When companies face pressure for local responsiveness, they incur the cost of differentiating their products or strategies. Pressures for local responsiveness come from differences in consumer tastes and preferences, differences in traditional practices and infrastructure, differences in distribution channels, and demands from host governments. When companies face pressure for local responsiveness, Differences in consumer tastes and preferences. When consumer tastes and preferences differ significantly between countries, firms face strong pressures for local responsiveness. Differences in infrastructure and traditional practices. When there are differences in infrastructure and or traditional practices between countries, pressures for local responsiveness emerge. While many products like Coca-Cola are accepted around the world, when consumer preferences and tastes differ significantly between countries, companies have to adapt the product mix and or the marketing message. Auto companies sell a lot of pickup trucks to individuals in the US, for example, but have to market them as utility vehicles in Europe. The third one is the differences in distribution channels. A firm's marketing strategies may be influenced by differences in distribution channels between countries. Fourth is the host government demands. Economic and political demands imposed by host country governments may necessitate a degree of local responsiveness. Differences in distribution channels also prompt companies to change. In Brazil, for example, about 36% of food retailing takes place through supermarkets. In Russia, supermarket sales account for less than 1% of food retailing. Cell phone companies have been struggling to identify ways to bring service to remote parts of India and Africa where traditional service methods weren't viable. Finally, companies may be required by host governments to be locally responsive in the US. For example, pharmaceuticals have to grow through FDA testing, and food products have to be labeled with nutrition information. The third one is the differences in distribution channels. A firm's market. How do the pressures for cost reductions and local responsiveness influence a firm's choice of strategy? So, how should companies compete in foreign markets? Well, there are four basic strategies. First is the global standardization, second is localization, transnational, and lastly, international. Each strategy makes sense in certain situations, depending on which pressures a firm is facing. The next reporter will discuss each of that strategies. Thank you.
Global standardization strategy. So question, when does a global standardization strategy make sense? It focuses on increasing profitability and profit growth by reaping the cost reductions that come from economies of scale, learning effects, and location economies. So the goal of global standardization strategy is to pursue a low-cost strategy on a global scale and makes sense when there are strong pressures for cost reduction and demands for local responsiveness are minimal. Global standardization strategy. So question, when does a global localization strategy? So when does a localization strategy make sense? It focuses on increasing profitability by customizing the firm's goods or services so that they can provide a good match to tastes and preferences in different national markets. It makes sense when there are substantial differences across the nations with regard to consumer tastes and preferences and where cost pressures are not too intense. Localization strategy. Transnational strategy. So, when does a transnational strategy make sense? It tries to simultaneously achieve low cost through location economies, economies of scale, and learning effect, and also differentiate the products offering across the graphics, geographics rather. So, example,
formal joint ventures, short-term contractual arrangement, and the number of initial international strategic alliance has risen significantly in recent decades. Transnational advantages of strategic alliances. So, question, why form a strategic alliance? So, strategic alliances are attractive because they facilitate entry into a foreign market. It allows firms to share the fixed cost and associate risk of developing new products or processes, and brings together complementary skills and assets that neither partner could easily develop on its own. It can also help establish technological standards for the industry that will benefit the advantages of strategic alliances. So question, what are the drawbacks of strategic alliances? Strategic alliances can give competitors low-cost routes to news, technology, and markets. Unless a firm is careful, it can give away more in a strategic alliance than it receives. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is my part, making alliance work. So, when you say making alliance work, ito ay tinatawag na pakikipag-alyansa between the relation of business. An alliance means it is a relation in which people groups or countries agree to work together. So there's a question. Question is how can firms increase the success of their alliance? The key to increase and success for their alliance is to ensure that on partnership is successful. Kumbaga ang pagkakaroon ng good alliances and success is need to develop the right working relation. So meron tayong 3 factors to the function of success alliances, which is partner selection, alliance structures, and the manner in which the alliance is managed. So, the first one is partner selection. So there's an explanation to this topic. When you say partner selection, sa pagiging good alliance it should be objective, transparent, or clear and fair. The main reason for having a proper selection is to identify the best matching partner and avoid unsuitable partner, getting to know potential partner and understand strengths and weaknesses. The second one is alliance structures. A good alliances should be focused on how the relation among your partner to be organized, govern, and manage your businesses. Extract a significant, credible commitment from the partner in advance. The third one is the managing the alliances. Ang pagkakaroon ng good alliances as managing is also a It is also a profession and corporate function required to define vision, structure, goals, way of working, and metrics. It's required as manager from both companies to build international and interpersonal relationship. So there are following example of primary activities. There are logistic, marketing and sales, customer service, and product. So primary activities involve creating the product, marketing and delivering the product to buyers, and providing support and after sales service to the buyers of the product. So this is exception. The exception is logistic, because the logistic is involved is operation for how many people, facilities or supplies. So when different stages of value chain are dispersed to those locations around the world, well, where value added is maximized, where cost of value creation is maximized. Pressure for local responsiveness. Such pressure arises from varying difference in traditional practices and infrastructure and customer preferences and taste. So excess capacity. I'm sorry. Excess capacity. Example, if you own a cosmetic company and order 200 product but you sell 150 product, you may determine that you have an excess capacity of 50 product. Host government demand. Economic and political demand imposed by host country government may necessitate degree of local responsiveness. Differences, pressure, local responsiveness come. So excess capacity, host demand, government demand. Different in consumer taste preferences, strong pressure for local responsiveness emerges when consumer taste and preference differ significantly countries. Sa distribution channel naman, a firm marketing strategies needs to be responsiveness to difference in distribution channel between countries. When pressure are high for local responsiveness but low for reduction, it is a transitional strategy. The answer is transitional strategy, because transitional strategy is to achieve low cost through location economies of scales, and learning effect. Different the product offering across geographical market to account for local difference. Transnational companies do not have subsidiaries but just many companies. Transnational companies do not have a centralized managed system. That's all for me. Thank you.